Hello, everybody. It is Thursday in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My name is Adam Bittner, assistant sports editor for multimedia at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, joined for our weekly Zeise's Right video by Paul Zeise, presented by Pella Windows and Doors of Pittsburgh. We'll tell you more about them in a little bit. Paul, how are you?
I'm doing good, Adam. I just walked out of my physical therapy appointment, and don't get old is all I'm going to tell you. Don't get
I'm
old.
I'm trying. It's not working, Paul. I'm trying my best.
I'm just telling you, man. Yeah, my doctor, Dr. Vince, I think in a different life he was a sadistic torture guy or something because now the good thing is a little bit later tonight when I loosen up and everything, I'll feel a lot better. But boy, right when I walk out, it's tough. So I'm good though. I'm really good.
Well, let's help you loosen up with a little bit of Steelers quarterback talk. I think that's always an easy topic to discuss. The big topic today is Steelers owner Art Rooney telling KDK's Bob Pompiani in a pre-Super Bowl interview that he's open to the Steelers trading for a quarterback this offseason, kind of fanning the flames on the Justin Fields fire that a lot of fans have been they've been kind of beating that drum. So, Paul, I want to get your opinion first on the concept of giving up resources in a trade to acquire a quarterback to compete with Kenny Pickett. I just don't think that those two things are really compatible. I think if you're giving up draft capital, if you're giving up, possibly players, if you're giving up money, you're not doing it so that a guy, hypothetically Justin Fields, can sit behind Kenny Pickett and come in and play for him. If Kenny Pickett struggles, you're doing it to A, probably compete with Kenny Pickett, and B, probably give that person the job. That's why I'm still a little bit suspicious that any of these trade rumors, whether they're Russell Wilson or anyone else, would ever happen.
Well, I would have to see who it is, right, Adam? I mean, if it's, and I don't even know what his contract status is, but let's say it's somebody like Jacoby Brissett. I mean, I wouldn't imagine it would take that much to get a guy like that, right? And you would probably bring him in, and I could see that being the case where you're going to have a guy like that come in and just sort of compete, quote unquote compete, but really he's going to be the backup. And if Kenny Pickett falters, he'll be the guy that can get you through the end of the season because he's proven he can win games here and there in the NFL. But the other rumors, I actually agree with you, believe it or not. You're not trading for Justin Fields if you're not going to make him your starter. You're just not. You're not bringing Russell Wilson here, and nor would he want to come here if he's going to be your backup. He's a guy that's looking at his clock, and what is he, like 37 years old or whatever he is? I mean, he's not looking at his clock and saying, yeah, I'm going to spend my last couple of years as a backup to Kenny Pickett. So I think that it all depends on what level of quarterback we're talking about. And I really, really, really would be very, very suspicious of any rumor that suggests they're going to go get one of these guys who's a starter and say, okay, well, you're going to come in and compete. You might be our backup. Even Justin Fields, I can't see a scenario where you're going to bring a guy like him in because you're not going to get him cheap. No matter what you think, you're not going to get him cheap. He's a first-round pick and all that other stuff. So I agree with you, Adam. I think that if they're going to bring a guy in, it's going to be somebody like, the only reason I bring up his name, Jacoby Brissett, is because, I saw his name on one of these blogs somewhere, and he's the kind of guy that I've said, okay, well, that would actually make sense, and if he's a free agent, that makes even more sense. But I can't imagine you're going to trade for somebody, bring them in here with the idea that, well, we're going to bring you in and you're going to probably be a backup, because I don't think that works.
I think the price for Justin Fields I've seen going around, Paul, is a second-round pick, and yeah, I think that's where I begin to say you're not gonna take a second-round pick and essentially flush it down the toilet, assuming, if you start Kenny Pickett and things go well, then you flush the second-round pick down the toilet to have Justin Fields. Now, granted, maybe if things start working out with Kenny Pickett, you have Justin Fields on the roster, maybe you can flip him for a second or third round pick to someone else. I just think there's a lot of steps between here and there that are completely unnecessary. Paul, let me just ask this next question in a vacuum, though. Who do you think is a better fit objectively for what Arthur Smith is going to want to do with this new Steelers offense? Justin Fields or Kenny Pickett?
Well, I mean, I think obviously Kenny Pickett. Well, you know what? Here's the thing, Adam. Let me think about that. That's a great question. I would say this. It fits Kenny Pickett because you're not going to ask Kenny Pickett to carry the load and do some of the things that we see some of these other offenses ask their quarterback to do. That being said, if you can add Justin Fields' legs to a running game that's already going to be, bolstered, and you're going to have the 2 and 3 tight end sets and do all the different things that they want to do. Now you add a quarterback that can really run and do a lot of damage. I'll be honest with you. I know that Arthur Smith doesn't necessarily like or hasn't necessarily utilized that kind of quarterback. But I would have to believe that Justin Fields would be a really dangerous player in an offense that is predicated on running the football when you consider that you're adding him in the way that you're adding him in. So my answer in a long way, I actually think both of them fit the offense. Kenny Pickett probably is a little bit more of a prototype because, he's going to be able to do the play action stuff. The throws you're going to ask him to make are probably throws he can make. But good Lord, if you could add Justin Fields' legs into that, how much more dangerous would that offense be?
Yeah, and I kind of agree with you, Paul, and I think that's where the trade conversations should be centered. And I don't think that we should just pretend that if you bring someone else like Justin Fields in, that there's going to be a competition. I think you're making a choice when you make that trade, and just I think that clarifies things, right? If you say, well, you think Justin Fields is the better guy, then to me, I'm willing to entertain the idea of a trade. Then I'm willing to entertain giving up a second-round pick to say, okay, this guy's probably going to be our starter, and then Kenny Pickett might get another chance if Justin Fields falters rather than the other way around. Paul, let me ask that same question with regard to free agent quarterbacks. We've talked a lot about Ryan Tannehill. We've talked about Kirk Cousins. You just mentioned Jacoby Brissett. Russell Wilson, I think, probably is on the periphery of that conversation. But do any of those guys that we've talked about to this point, regardless of what it would take to get them, do you think they fit the system better or worse than Kenny Pickett does?
Well, obviously Ryan Tannehill probably would be the guy that makes the most sense, simply because he's got the history in the system, and we saw the way that he ran it. I mean, the couple of years in a row there when they had their running game really rolling with Derrick Henry, Tannehill actually was a really functional player. But I don't know that necessarily means at this stage in his career, 3-4 years removed from that, he still has what it takes. The thing about it, Adam, is I think that any of the quarterbacks we're talking about, because of what the objectives of the offense, at least as I understand it, are, and the way that he wants to run it, and the way that he wants the things that he's going to value. I mean, I think any one of these quarterbacks would be good. I really like, for instance, like I said, I think, a guy like Jacoby Brissett, who he's proven that you can win games with it. Ryan Tannehill obviously knows the offense. Kenny Pickett's never going to be a guy where you're going to want him to stand back there and chuck it around 45 times. But could he be a guy that throws it 22, 23 times? And, out of those 22 and 23 times, 8 to 10 of them are play action plays, and he's handing it off a lot, and they've got 3 tight end sets, and they're, playing big and heavy. And I think he can be an effective player like that. And I know that, there's some people that say, well, you didn't make him a first-round pick to be that kind of player. Okay, well, that's great, but that's pie in the sky stuff. He's here. He's who you got. So now you got to figure out, how do we make it so that first-round pick isn't wasted? And if he can't run a system where you're going to ask him to throw the ball 45 times a game and do some of those crazy things that, the top quarterbacks can do, you got to figure out the way that you can get the most out of them. That's what I like about Arthur Smith, the hire. I know there were a lot of people that weren't happy about it because everybody wanted someone from the Sean McVay tree or the Cal Shanahan tree. But at the end of the day, if you don't have personnel like that, and you don't have people like that, and you don't have players like that, and especially if you don't have a quarterback like that, it makes no sense. So, I like a lot of these guys, Adam. I just think that when you look at what the Steelers want to try and be, You can deny it till you're blue in the face and talk about how the game is played differently and all that other great stuff. But this is the reality. So let's deal in the reality. I think that this is a good fit for Kenny Pickett's talents. And, I think you could bring any number of quarterbacks in here, and they probably would be a good fit for them as well. If you're going to tell me that you have a chance to bring in Justin Fields or somebody like that adds a different dimension running the football, I'd be really interested in that. But for the most part, I think Kenny Pickett, you got to give him a shot to get this done.
Paul, while we're talking quarterbacks, I wanted to get your thoughts on Jerry Dulack's reporting that it's looking like Mike Sullivan has a good chance to stick around as the quarterbacks coach. It's not official yet. They're also interviewing some other candidates, but there seems to be some hope that Mike Sullivan could stay, at least on his part. Should that be the case? Yeah, I think he did a nice job of play calling, Paul. Kind of gave the offensive spark with Mason Rudolph after Matt Canada was fired, but did he really do much for Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky, for that matter, the guy that they had invested in as the backup, until he just wasn't working out anymore?
If your problem with the Steelers over the last 3 years is quarterback development, I mean, you got rid of one of the problems. But how does Mike Sullivan, who is directly in charge of the position, how does he get a pass? And I know that there's probably that element of, well, Kenny really likes him. Kenny gets along with him. He understands Kenny. Okay, well, that's great, but he hasn't done a good job of developing Kenny, obviously. So I'm different, Adam, in this. I hate these, this guy wanted the job, didn't get it, so let's leave him back in his other job. I hate the idea of, we're going to go in a different direction, right? Let's go in a different direction. But if you're going to go in a different direction, then go in a different direction. And we talked about it last week, Adam. I hate the fact that you bring in a new coordinator and don't let him hire his own guys. That's to me the biggest issue here. But I don't know how Mike Sullivan gets a pass or whatever, and Matt Canada gets fired, when the biggest issue that they had, or at least the Steelers had, or at least we think they had, is the development or lack thereof at the quarterback spot.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of Mike Sullivan calling the plays for Kenny Pickett to see, what their chemistry actually looks like, and whether he has a better feel of Kenny Pickett than Matt Canada did. Because we saw that he was interviewed for multiple coordinator jobs. I don't think he's without redeeming values, but yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, he's the guy developing these guys. I'm kind of with you, Paul, of let Arthur Smith pick who he wants to pick, move on and see what happens. Paul, we're going to come back and talk about the Steelers wide receiver situation. One of our favorite topics on this show. They need a new wide receivers coach. They need potentially some new wide receivers. So we're going to come back right after this break, talk a little bit more about that. Before we do, just want to thank our primary sponsor for this episode and every episode of the Paul Zeise podcast here on the Post-Gazette Sports Now YouTube channel, Pella Windows and Doors of Pittsburgh. There's no better place to get new windows and doors installed in your home than Pella, who can help you save on energy costs year-round. Schedule a free in-home consultation with your local Pella Windows and Doors to find the right product for your home and budget. Give them a call at 866-593-1560 to discuss your project further. That's 866-593-1560 to get started planning on your new windows and doors installation with Pella Windows and Doors of Pittsburgh.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.